Good evening, everyone. We will get folks a couple minutes to join us and then we will get started. All right. Well, welcome to our families to our very first Tiger Talk of the summer. My name is Casey Ford, and I serve as the Director of Student Experience in the Center for Student Leadership and Engagement here at Clemson University. And I have the pleasure of supporting our parents and families here at Clemson. So, as we will talk in much detail this evening, we are focused a lot on your students' transition to Clemson and all that is entailed in that experience. But certainly want to make sure that we are supporting you as the folks supporting them as well. And so we've got a few ways that we do that. One of those is this, what we like to call our Tiger Talk webinar series. So we have some campus partners who have joined us to spend some time with each of you to talk through some specific topics over the summer, beginning with our orientation and advising overview. A few housekeeping things before we launch into the content. Here in just a moment, I will let the rest of our panelists introduce themselves so you know who you were joined by tonight. They then will talk through their content. We will work through our presentation as it relates to all things new student and family orientation, give you all a chance to ask questions, and then wrap up with some closing remarks and reminders. As I often say, I'm confident that you are confident in how to use Zoom at this point in our world, but just some reminders that this is a Zoom webinar, so a little bit different than a typical Zoom meeting. Your audio and video has been muted intentionally, just so we can make sure that we are giving our panelists the floor, so to speak. And then you'll also notice that this is being recorded. Part of why we do that is to be able to share this out later. So if you need to jump off a little bit early or a question comes up later on and you can't quite remember the answer, no worries. We will share this out in a few days, both on our Clemson Family Programs YouTube page, which we will share in the chat, and then as well as through the Clemson Parent and Family Experience portal. Last reminders here before we jump in, you'll see on your toolbar, there is a little question and answer button that you can click. We would ask that you please use that to submit your questions. That helps us all kind of look for those in the same spot and be able to mark when we've answered those. Some things that may make sense for us to type a quick message back, and so we'll do that. Some things we may save to address kind of with the group. And so please use that Q&A feature, and then we will use the chat feature to share out any links that kind of go along with what we're saying, and any other information and final resources. With that, I will pass it over to our presenters for introductions, beginning with Matthew Boudreau.
Hey friends, my name is Matthew Boudreau, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Associate Director of New Student Orientation within the Office of Visits, Events, and Orientation. So my job here on campus is to make sure that all of our incoming students get onboarded to the institution. And I'll pass it off to Kayla.
Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. My name is Kayla Gartner. I am the Assistant Director for the Academic Advising Center in the College of Behavioral, Social, and Health Sciences. I am also an academic advisor for communication and sports communication students. Passing on to Jess.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jess Martin, and I am the Director of Undergraduate Academic Advising Coordination within the Division of Undergraduate Learning, and I am located in the Academic Success Center on campus. And Katie.
Thanks, Jess. Hey, everybody. My name is Katie Black. I am the Director of Registration and Advising for the College of Agriculture, Forestry, and Life Sciences. I serve our undeclared students in this college as well as our 12 academic programs. So lots of different majors. Super excited to have you guys here tonight.
Awesome. All right. And kicking us off with content, we will pass it back to Matthew Boudreau.
Awesome. All right, friends. So, what I'm here today is to kind of explain to you all sort of what the orientation process looks like from both the student point of view and the supporter point of view as well. Many of you who might have children at other institutions or have been through other orientation programs at other institutions might understand orientation as we come to campus for a day or two potentially. We learn everything and we get our course schedules there, and it's kind of a one-stop shop. Well, how we do things with orientation here at Clemson is a little bit different. We look at orientation as this larger experience that is encompassing of a bunch of events inside of it. So if we can click to the next slide. Like I said, we'll go through sort of this overview of it, and then we'll keep going from there. First and foremost, before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty, if you all ever run into any questions about your students' orientation process here at Clemson, again, here is our email address and our phone number. Myself and a few of our staff members are always behind this email address, always behind the phone, answering them as we can, to make sure that we get your questions answered. So if you have any questions related to the onboarding process here, we can always be a good sort of initial screening point for you all, and they can always connect you to other outside entities across campus that could better help suit your questions. A glimpse of who's sort of behind the scenes when it comes to the orientation staff here at Clemson. So we are led by our fearless leader, Jody, as the director of our office, and she oversees two other functional areas of the institution, including orientation as well. You've already met me. Avery, Abby, and Farjana are currently actually in our student leader training for our orientation ambassadors. So that's why I'm here on the call today. But Avery serves as our assistant director of orientation, right alongside me, working with our student leaders. Then we have two graduate interns from our higher education student affairs program who serve as interns for us, Abby and Farjana, who are all here to assist and help you all in your journeys. So, like I said earlier, whenever we're talking about orientation here at Clemson, we're talking about a larger process that has multiple events throughout. So, here's sort of an overview of what a student will experience when it comes to being oriented to Clemson. Everything that is on the top part of the bar is all of our required steps, meaning mandatory for all incoming students. And then everything below the bar are our supplemental experiences that students can opt into. So we'll kind of dive deep into each one of these as we go throughout the presentation. So starting actually a month prior to our opening date on April 15th, mid-March is when we started communicating with you all about what the orientation experience is at Clemson, and what those steps would initially take. So here's an example of some emails that you may have gotten as a supporter or that your student has gotten as well, sort of kind of outlining and explaining the steps of what our orientation process is. And on April 15th was actually the first day that a student can log into their admissions portal, click the orientation tab, and formally start the process of orientation here at Clemson. One thing that we like to point out in this presentation is that when in doubt, or if there's ever any confusion about where your student might be at in the process, this is their admissions portal, the same place that they said yes to Clemson, saw their acceptance letter, applied, all that jazz. This is sort of the hub of truth of where they might be at in their onboarding process. So when in doubt, always go to the admissions portal, and we will see on the next slide that we have some handy dandy checklists for your students to always make sure that they are meeting the mark and kind of going through each task and each step, whether that's through their enrollment journey or whether that's their orientation specific journey as well. So once they log into the portal, they can scroll down to this checklist and say, okay, here are some due items that I have, and here are things that I can be working on throughout the summer to make sure that once the fall comes, I'm good to go and ready to start. So when a student gets to this page, they'll go ahead and click that orientation tab at the top center. And then this is what they'll see. So we have a really nice organized moving checklist for them that says, here's what I still need to complete on the left side. And as soon as they complete that task, it moves over to the completed section on the right. And that will happen live and in real time. The next step underneath that is always sort of like where they can live at or see sort of what their next step is and where that instruction might be. So that first step sort of in the orientation process is to, again, sign up and let us know that you are ready to attend or ready to start the orientation process. It's a very simple form. This is exactly what it looks like. It's just a checkbox and press submit, and then they're already done with that first step. So just letting us know that they're ready to start the orientation process. Once they complete this form and pay their student transition and support fee, they then will get access to our virtual orientation modules that we use through Advantage Design Group. So for all of you who maybe in your jobs have done any sort of like yearly HR training modules, that kind of thing, this is sort of the vibe that our virtual orientation modules consist of. As you can see here specifically, like we want to point out is that not only is there a student login for your student to experience these, but there also is a guest login where we mirror supporter information to what your student is seeing and what your student is experiencing on this online platform. So ask your student to send you this link. You can go in and create a guest login, and you actually get to have your own sort of virtual orientation experience specifically catered to you. Here's sort of an overview of what is covered. It pretty much is Clemson A to Z. Anything that you can think of that would be helpful for you or your student to know about the institution, we load up our virtual orientation modules in this platform. So as you can see, we cover all things across academic support services, student life, how to pay for college, resources, our policy, safety information, and then sort of what their next steps are in the orientation process. What's important here for us in this sort of process is that we ask that the students in their time with sitting down with the virtual orientation modules is to get to this slide fully. And so this slide lives at the end of the academic section, section 2. And this is sort of what will unlock the next step in their orientation journey. So we've gone through sign up, we've gone through paying the student transition support fee. We are now inside of our virtual orientation modules. And then to go ahead and unlock that advising appointment, this is the form that our students need to fill out. As you can see, there's a big stop sign on the slide that we need them to stop and not just move past. And it kind of gives them the instructions and the steps to filling out the pre-advising form with that little orange link right there. So this is a super crucial, important step. If your students are ever stuck or they're like, oh, I've done my modules, but I haven't heard from an advisor. If you're hearing them say that, something that you could help us out with and say, oh, have you completed your pre-advising form? And then you can tell them where to go ahead and find it after this. This is where we find that a lot of students might just click past the slide and not actually click the form and fill it out. So I'll go ahead and pass it off to Jess to continue on with what the pre-advising form is for, what we ask of them to fill out, why it's important, and then the continued on in the advising process from there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Matthew. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Jess Martin, Director of Undergraduate Academic Advising Coordination. As Matthew said, this form is vital to your student having a successful academic advising appointment. So it's really important that students take the time to fill this out with complete information. So this form has actually, we kind of redid it this year. So it's in smaller chunks. It's asking a lot of information. So I highly encourage that as you're supporting your student through this process, that when they get to this form, you encourage them to set some time aside to complete it. It's not something that can kind of be done in 5 minutes and move on. If your student does do it in 5 minutes, you might want to ask some questions about what they filled out. So this form is going to cover all kinds of information that the advisor will use to prep for the student's advising appointment. Of particular note, we're going to be asking students about their any kind of incoming credit they might be bringing. So that could be AP, that could be IB, that could be dual enrollment classes. It could be all of the above, right? There's so many different ways that students bring in credit. And the more information that student can provide to advisors, the better the advising experience will be. We can only advise based off of what the students' transcripts are that they've sent us or what they tell us. We also are very aware that AP and IB credits will not be released until early July, usually after the 4th of July. So we will absolutely be fine with students telling us what they think they scored. That is a-okay. The most important thing is that they tell us they took a test, and then we can use that information in the advising appointment. So again, we don't advise cold, right? We spend a lot of time, and I know advisors put a ton of time into prepping for their appointments to help make sure that they're very clear on, of course, not only just what the student's major is, but what their career aspirations are. If the student has indicated they might want to change their major, and then of course any incoming credit that they might have. So please encourage your student to take time to fill this out. Next slide, please. So in the actual academic advising appointment, students will be receive an email from their advisors. We also really ask for your help in encouraging the student to check their Clemson email address. So we want to go ahead and get started with that really important step. So again, if you have a student who says, oh, I haven't heard from my advisor yet, it's a great question to ask them, have they checked their Clemson email? So the academic advising appointment is going to be coordinated between the advisor and the student. Again, it will come to their Clemson email, and they will be asked to schedule an appointment, likely through a system called CU Navigate. And that just really, it's an appointment booking. It does many things, but at this point, it's an appointment booking system. So it allows for students to see their advisor's availability and choose an advising appointment that works best with their schedule. And it will be conducted virtually on Zoom with an academic advisor. So it will be a one-on-one appointment. We ask that it's the student who is in that appointment only, and that's so that we can make the best use of the time, communicate with the student and understand their needs, what they're worried about, what their concerns are, and again, make sure that we're reconciling their high school credits and what they're bringing in with their Clemson curriculum. Next slide, please. And last but certainly not least is the actual course registration process. So there's the advising meeting, and then there's a course registration time period. And we have course registration, usually there's a week in June, a week in July, and then also a couple days in August. So you can see here the breakdown of those dates. Once a student is advised, then they are able to select what we call a time ticket, and that's where they'll choose when they register for classes. So it's an automatic process. They will not be able to register for or they'll not be able to select a time ticket for registration until they are advised. So it's a stepped process on purpose. And again, that is also a process that is conducted virtually with the academic advisors, as well as support from our wonderful orientation ambassadors, our registrar's office, and we'll also have CCIT on hand for support. Another thing that parents can help us out very much with is ensuring that their student has downloaded the VPN. The VPN is virtual private network. The students are going to have that in order to access the registration system. You'll be receiving email information about this, how to get to it. You can also go to clemson.edu and type in VPN. A student will not be able to access the registration system if they aren't on VPN, because we do this virtually. So that's another really helpful thing that we ask parents to help make sure that their student has downloaded that. We know that we're asking students to do a lot. It's a lot of information, but this is a really helpful space for us. Thanks so much, and I will give it back over to Matthew.
Awesome. All right. So now we're going to move into sort of the non-required supplemental parts of our orientation experience. So we at Clemson for sure understand that feeling connected to this place and getting an in-person experience is still vital and still necessary for our students and our parents and supporters to have. So in order to have that, what we do is we put on all throughout the summer is our Ready, Set, Roar program. This is our 2-day well, 2-day and 1-day, but we'll get into that in a second. But it's our supplemental in-person experience that we host throughout the summer here at Clemson. And then on our website, this is a screen grab of all of our session offerings that we have for our 2-day sessions that are dedicated to our first year students starting in the fall. So we organize our Ready, Set, Roar sessions by academic college, and we incorporate a lot of our academic partners inside of our session. So here's sort of a overview of those days and how we organize those specific 2-day sessions. We also offer some one-day programs as well for our specific pathway options to Clemson. So if your student is enrolling in Summer Start or is a Global Start student, or if your student is transferring to the institution from another institution, then we will offer them a Ready, Set, Roar program that is a one-day schedule. It's pretty much just taking the best parts of our two-day schedule and condensing it down into a one day. And then those are the dates that we have for those. And all of this, your student can sign up for their Ready, Set, Roar programs if they choose to attend on their admissions portal in the orientation tab. And so you might be thinking, well, what is their offering? What are we going to do at Ready, Set, Roar? So here's sort of a general overview of what our schedule looks like. Everything that is highlighted in orange is specific to you all, to our parents and supporters on the call. So not only do we cater to the students at Ready, Set, Roar, but we also have a personalized supporter and guest track where we keep y'all just as busy as Ready, Set, Roar, to where we mirror a lot of similar programs that our students go through with you all, just through the supporter and the parent lens. So you'll hear a welcome from university administration. You'll hear our keynote speaker, our dean from Undergraduate Learning, Dr. Sean Britton, gives that presentation about how to be successful in college and how you all can be supporters through that success. You all will sit through various presentations and panels with Clemson staff members, offices, departments, our various ambassador groups, if you will. But your students will be immersed in a small group experience as well, so they can meet other students in their academic college. We will have a campus community showcase. Picture a large tabling fair of all of our campus resources and community resources. Those of you who might need more than just a 5-minute tabling conversation with an office or a department can attend an interest session where those offices will actually present those resources to you in a more formal way. You'll have the chance to write a note from home to your student that our offices will then deliver after the first 6 weeks that they've been here. It's a little note of encouragement in their first year here at Clemson. We'll do some department drop-ins where you can ask your more specific one-on-one questions. An example would be our student accessibility services crew will be there. If your student needs any sort of testing accommodations, whatever that might be, they'll be there to have a more drop-in style one-on-one conversation with you all. If you've never been to Clemson before or haven't ever been to campus, we offer some tours as well during our Ready, Set, Roar experience led by our orientation ambassadors. We have some fun virtual engagements too while we're here. We can lead you all through a goose chase, or what we're calling an all-in adventure, through a fun interactive app that we're going to try out this summer that we're super excited about. And you all will have the option to attend a guest social in the Masters Club of the football stadium. So if you've never been in a suite before in Memorial Stadium and want to experience that for an evening, you all will be hosted by IPTE for a guest social there. Included in the cost of attendance is an overnight stay in the residence halls for students only. And then the next day are two sort of highlights that we have is for our honor students and parents and guests. You all have specific time with the Honors College to interact with that staff. And then our academic college time is sort of our grand highlight where we ask the academic college units, their student services team, their advising teams, looking at Katie and Kayla on the call, as they are a large part of this for their colleges, to interact and sort of share with the parents, guest supporters, and the students here's the 101 and here's the ropes of how to navigate life in this specific academic unit. New this year as well, for those of you who can't come to campus to attend a Ready, Set, Roar program, your student has the opportunity to attend a virtual Tiger Talk. Similar to this exact webinar, our orientation ambassadors will hop on a Zoom with some students and actually give a presentation that the orientation ambassadors give at Ready, Set, Roar to these students virtually. It's a top 10 questions presentation where we've carefully crafted some questions that we predict you all probably have or that your students might have. We're going to go ahead and jump ahead of the game and get those questions answered. And then on the sign up form as well, your students will have the opportunity to write in questions that they specifically have that our orientation ambassadors will be well trained on to make sure that your student feels confident closer to move-in day and starting here in the fall. So we do have about a 25 student capacity to these to keep the Zoom space as intimate as possible. And then those signups are available on the admissions portal as well. And this is the team. So if you all choose to attend a virtual Tiger Talk, or if you all choose to come to Ready Set Roar, here's our lovely team of orientation ambassadors. We have 21 really wonderful, iconic legend student leaders here on campus. Today was actually their first day of training. So we'll be training them all week, and they'll be ready to start their Ready Set Roar and their virtual Tiger Talk and course registration experiences for you all come the summer. And I believe that is all for me. I think I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to our next little crew.
Thanks, Matthew. It's the Matthew Show. Academic advising at Clemson can look very different depending on the college or the major that your student might be in. Around campus, we have staff advisors, we have faculty advisors, we have advisors that only register and work with first-year students, and we have advisors that'll follow your students through all 4 years. So it really is going to look different for everybody on the call depending on the major that your student is. And if they change majors, that advising structure may change too. So it can look really different across the landscape. And that's really just kind of fits for each one of the different nuances of majors within the unit. So lots of things going on there. Really, within advising, one of the biggest things that we're trying to help your student with early on is teaching them about all the tools and resources that they have at their disposal to navigate this process. It's overwhelming. It's like drinking from a fire hose, and we have so much to tell them and teach them. And there's a lot of resources out there especially in the virtual orientation, that they can be kind of biting off it in little chunks as we go. Some of the most important tools, we've already mentioned them: iRoar, CU Navigate, and DegreeWorks. All of us as advisors, DegreeWorks is what we use to match the student's record to the curriculum that they're in. And if they're thinking about changing majors, we can use DegreeWorks to run what ifs for other majors. DegreeWorks is the one thing that we are always really trying to help a new student understand and master. The sooner that they can master that, the better of a student they're going to be kind of navigating throughout the process. All of our students that are here will be assigned an academic advisor. They may not be meeting in summer orientation with the person that they're ultimately assigned to. Again, we've got a lot of students to get through this summer orientation in a very short amount of time. So we're bringing all of the masses in, and it may not be that same person they see in the fall, but it may be. Usually you will not see your student assigned to an advisor yet. That will later be in iRoar, and that will be their advisor for the fall. Right now, they're just kind of getting pulled out of the process as they finish those modules. Advisors are grabbing them as they are available and as the student is ready. And advisors are really that great resource to be that campus knowledge. I've been at Clemson for a little over 20 years now, and to know all the nuances of what happens here and how to navigate this process, that's what we're here for. And I am always telling students to go talk to somebody else. I'm not the expert on how to be successful in the classroom. I'm going to pass you over to the Academic Success Center for those things. So we're really just that great touch point. Kayla's going to give us a little analogy here in a minute that I'm going to build off of when I talk about how that advisor fits into that profile.
Okay, so this slide is to discuss like how to best support your student. So I like to use the analogy of the car. There are a lot of times in high school where the parents were in the driver's seat, the student was in the passenger seat, or the school counselor might have been in the passenger seat. But here at Clemson, we want the student in the driver's seat because they make the decisions. We want them fully engaged. This is their journey. So we want them to be in the driver's seat because they know what they want. And the advisor is going to be in the passenger seat. So we're going to help guide them. It's more so like a GPS. We do not want to be in the driver's seat because I tell students all the time, I already graduated. So I I was in my driver's seat and I got out and got a new car. I don't need to be in your driver's seat because this is your journey, and what I may have wanted, you may want the complete opposite. I tell students all the time that I majored in Spanish, and they look at me like I have three heads. Most of them cannot stand Spanish. So that right there tells me alone that we are two different we are two different people. So we want students to be in the driver's seat, advisor to be in the passenger seat. Parents, some of us want you to be in the back seat. Other of us don't want you in a car at all, not to be harsh. We want you to be encouraging and supporting, but again, we don't want you to hop in the passenger seat or the driver's seat. My mom used to be a helicopter mom. She really just wanted me to stay on top of things. But once I got to college, even if I asked her for advice, like she might have given me advice, but she didn't do it for me. So that is what we encourage you all to do, to encourage them, to support them, help them advocate for themselves. Is one of the things that we would love for you all to do. So student driver's seat, advisor passenger seat, parents in the back seat, or maybe just step out the car and wait till they get home. So for those that want to be engaged and involved, which we highly encourage, ask your student questions. I had about 7 or 8 advising appointments today for orientation registration. And you can ask your students like what we discussed during the advising appointment, what we discuss, whether it's in the fall or spring when we meet them, because they are required to meet with us at least once a semester. Feel free to ask them those questions. I was the student that just word vomited and told my parents everything anyway. My brother was the opposite. So they had to ask him questions to get any type of information. That is totally okay. As we stated, let your student drive. This is their journey. And if they make mistakes, that is okay. Advisors are here to help them. Um, other departments are also there to assist them. There are several resources. We will be sure that they get the things that they need. Make sure you are a soft place to land when plans change. I tell my students all the time, I changed my major twice while I was at Clemson. And my mother was the one that actually encouraged me to major in Spanish because she knew that that is what I had a passion for. Had no clue what I wanted to do after that. She was the one that told me that it was okay and everything was going to work out. Refocus to the positive. One of the things that I can think of if a student does not get their perfect schedule, I put it in the Q&A earlier, but our goal is to make sure that students leave with a full-time schedule and they have courses towards their degree progress. Our goal is not to make sure that they don't have any Friday classes or 8 a.m.s. That's never our goal during orientation, fall, spring, anytime. So if they're complaining about their schedule, I would ask them, do you have everything you need for graduation? Do you have a full-time schedule? That seems to be what the goal is here, and you accomplish that goal. Do not panic. That is probably easier said than done. Same thing. If they did a perfect plan ahead and they had to completely change, students just panic. Parents, we don't need you panicking either. Just reassure them that they have everything they need. And if they're not quite sure, just redirect them to us as advisors. Um, Help your students to set realistic expectations. Kind of like what I said before, you may not get the ideal schedule, but that is okay. That is not our goal. Our goal is to make sure that you get what you need for on-time graduation. Trust the process. Everything is not going to go as planned, and that is okay. Um, us as advisors, I think we've seen a lot of different situations and for the most part, everything has worked out. It might have not worked out exactly the way the student thought it was going to, but in the end, everything was fine. Like everything will be okay. And go to the source for answers. We are totally fine with, since we're a lot student facing, front facing, we're probably one of the first faces you'll see. We're okay with you starting with us, but kind of like what Katie said earlier, there may be things that are out of my wheelhouse. I always say not a part of my ministry. So I will direct you to someone else who's that is their wheelhouse, that is their job, and it's on the student to be sure to reach out to them. I can give you the information, but it's up to the student what they do with it.
Kayla, you were just speaking my language, all the things that you were saying. Sticking with the theme of the car, Kayla was talking about us being a navigator. Think of us like a travel guide, right? I'm not going on this trip with you. I'm helping you kind of look over your budget and think about what you want to do. I'm there to help you pick the destination. I really want I want the student to be paying attention to the road. They are the ones that have got to get up for that 8 a.m. class. I'm not there for that. The advisor can help map the route. We can warn you about detours. We can tell you about some cool things that are happening along your route that can help you figure out where you're going. But really, it's very much on the student to navigate this process. And that's why we really try to teach you all of the tools and resources that you have. I also often think about advising and kind of a level. And if all we ever do is discuss classes and what you're doing the next term, we're only in level one advising. My level 3 advisees, we are chatting when we see each other on the sidewalk, and I know where they're going for their full-time job because we have these conversations that evolve far beyond just what classes they're taking. And that's where I want to get with your student. There are plenty of students that never move out of level 1. All we ever discuss is their classes, and that's sad, honestly, for them. I want that to be something that they come in and tell me, hey, I already have my next schedule planned. This is what I'm thinking. What do you think about it? And I say, yes, those are going to work. Now let's shift and talk about your career. How are things going outside of the classroom? And we can really do things more than just picking classes. This is the first time probably in their experience that a schedule isn't just handed to them. Like, they may have some choice in what classes they take, but they're actually scheduled for them. Your student is going to schedule the day, the time, the instructor, and it's frustrating because building that schedule, the things that your high school did for your student is complicated. And it's going to be on the student to do those things. So that's really what that looks like. There's actually a great website out on Clemson that explains those responsibilities in detail, but truly checking off everything in DegreeWorks is the student's responsibility, not the advisors. We're going to talk about what they do, but they go and register for it. They make the grade. So we're going to help them through that, but we are the navigator, not the actual executor. Hit me with my next slide. These are a lot of those resources. You guys are going to hear a lot of these words. iRoar is kind of the main website that hosts everything about a student's record, everything that they could do to change their record if they wanted to change their major, things like that happen inside of iRoar. Inside of iRoar is where they're going to access these 3 things: DegreeWorks, their student profile, and their transcripts. Those 3 things are probably the most important thing for them to know that they're going to access right away. Like I said, DegreeWorks is that curriculum versus their transcript, and it's going to tell us what they're taking. DegreeWorks is really cool. Once they get in there and start playing with it, everything is clickable. As they complete things, they get check marked, and all of those clickable classes tell us more about when the class is offered, what its prerequisite is, even gives you a little description of the course. So this is really helpful in kind of working through, and it's mostly organized from kind of top to bottom, what they're going to take from freshman down to senior year. That student profile is what tells me more about that student when they entered Clemson, what their graduation timeline is, if they have a special distinction like it being in the honors college or being an athlete. I'm going to know those things about them there. The student profile also houses things like holds that are on their account that I might need to know about, tells me when they're going to be able to register. So that student profile, honestly, something that very few students find themselves navigating to early on, but they will use that a lot. So that student profile is really important. And oh my gosh, that transcript. Right now, your student is already needing to be sending us things, that AP, dual enrollment, IB credit. We need those things from the sources that are providing that credit, not from the high school. And that's really important for getting that culmination of credit to degree and us knowing what they have. Again, some of that might not be done yet. Some of our friends up north are still in school for a whole nother month, and that's fine. We're going to kind of make some projections about what we know about what the student's likely going to be bringing credit for. CU Navigate is great. At this point, we're going to be sending them links to register with us, but later, if they're wanting to explore, if they're wanting to make an appointment with their advisor, make an appointment with tutoring, this is where all of that is done. The academic catalog is the rule book. It is the Bible. It is what we follow. And it is going to have every policy, every rule, every course description, everything is in that catalog. We publish a new catalog every fall, and your student is entering on the 26-27 rule book. And that is the rule book that they follow. Sometimes when you get on Google and just search for Clemson catalog, or you search for something in the catalog, it may pull up an older catalog. That is not their rule book. The rules can change every single year. They are contracted to this catalog. If any of you were in college back in the 90s with me, we carried around paper catalogs. They were dog-eared and stuck some sticky notes in them to know where we were going. That just doesn't exist anymore. Everything's digital. So bookmarking that catalog and having that as a resource to know where to go back to, that is where I go and copy and paste rules all the time to send to students so they know it. Everything that we do to communicate with the student is going to be coming through their Clemson email. Teaching your student, if they haven't already mastered email etiquette, and I don't know how many 18-year-olds have, but starting to get some mastery on email and email management and email etiquette is really important. That inbox is going to be full all the time, just like mine, and they've got to find a way to manage it. Saying, well, I didn't see that email doesn't excuse them from knowing that something needed to happen in a timely manner, right? So flagging certain folks, flagging your advisor and your instructors so that those come to the top and don't get lost is really important, because they're also going to get emails about football games and clubs to join, and those things are super important too, but those are secondary, right? Canvas is where classes live. Canvas is and what's been in the news lately, but Canvas is the source for most of their class content is going to be kind of built out. Students will panic sometimes. They'll have a class that never appears in Canvas. I have some 70-year-old professors that do not put their classes in Canvas. Everything's still on paper in there. It is what most instructors use. It is what most instructors use for their grade book, but not all. But it is a great place, and especially if they're in a synchronous or asynchronous online class, everything will be there. And Clemson.edu is the source. There's a search bar inside of Clemson.edu up in the top corner. When they are searching for rules and policies, that's a great place to start. I get a lot of questions with things that I just turn around and Google, that they can find a lot of the answers in Clemson's website. Our website's hard to navigate, all college websites are, but as you dig down within that, use that search bar, it'll really help you. There's a lot of terminology that we are going to use with your student that is new to them, new to you, unique to Clemson. All of these are things that we're going to talk to your student about as they apply to them. But there's nothing wrong with going ahead and digging into the resources and understanding what some of these things may mean. So there's just a couple of different acronyms there to keep you confused. I mentioned this already, but the tips and tricks about email are so important. Email is, again, how we're going to communicate with them. Students can, forward their email to another email location, but I really recommend they're using the Outlook at clemson.edu and really managing that well. I often see students that do that redirect poorly and their emails bounce back, and then we've got to track them down. So using that main Outlook is important. Email etiquette. One of the things that I see with students a lot, they'll email me at 7 o'clock at night and then at 9 o'clock the next morning wondering why I haven't answered. Please, professional etiquette, giving us a little bit more leeway to get their questions answered. And sometimes if it's something that is just so easy to Google, I may not respond to them right away, right? Giving them a little bit of time to figure that out on their own. I don't want to be that immediate response. I become a crutch when I do that, right? I want to help them with the things that I know they need my help with. Students should go ahead and create a signature for their email that tells me their name, their major, and their CUID number. I have to have that CUID number to look them up in the system to know anything about them. And if they just send me an email that says, hey, Miss Katie, I need this class, and they don't tell me anything more, I've got to do a lot of legwork to get it done. So telling me everything I need to know in there, and maybe going ahead and addressing folks professionally. I'm not a doctor, but you should probably assume that everybody here is, and give me that honor, and I'll correct the student and be like, you can just call me Katie. That's fine. But going ahead and starting with everybody being doctor or professor is probably a safe way to go. Not calling the department chair Jim. That's kind of risky, starting there. And especially with females, that's one of the things I see across campus, is that with our female faculty, students often can be a little bit more lax. Please be sure that you are not calling them miss. They are doctors and deserve that recognition. Again, with advising and registration, this is where the panic really hits the fan. This is the day that they register for classes. It's at a certain time, and the pressure just really builds in that moment. It absolutely is real. That pressure is real. They're registering for classes in that live moment, but it is not the end all be all, and everything is fixable. But some things to kind of do before registration happens to get there. I've seen lots of things going on in the Q&A about the VPN. The VPN is essential. You're going to see when you look at that VPN website that there is a downloadable VPN that puts the product on your computer. Absolutely the way to go. It is the only way that iRoar works properly. There's another thing called CU Apps that makes a browser open in a browser. It's absolute garbage for registration day. Your student will be frustrated and in tears if they are using that CU Apps version. Be sure to download that VPN, and it can be downloaded multiple times. I'm seeing that if they don't have their school computer yet, use it on your computer or on a borrowed computer. Absolutely no worries there. Also, download Zoom. Again, Zoom in the browser can be a little bit funky. And if your student's having trouble on registration day, I'm going to pull them into a private breakout room so that they and I can figure out their issue. And I'm going to ask them to share their screen. And if they've never shared their screen before, they're then going to have to do all of the authentication with their computer. That's just going to waste time. So download Zoom, play with Zoom. You guys get across the house and get on Zoom together and just practice so that they know how to use this tool if they've not had to use it a lot. Thankfully, we are far enough away from COVID that not everybody's using it anymore. And then on registration day, we're going to do a lot of things with advanced searches and using attributes. And the more that they can use that plan ahead before they get to live registration, the more they understand how to navigate it, that easier that will be. If the first time they see iRoar and registration is on registration day, they will absolutely be more stressed out about the process.
All right. Incredible content from our presenters tonight. Thank you guys so much for sharing. I know we've got a few questions here in the Q&A feed, so give us just a second to scroll through these, and then if there are others that come to mind based on what Katie most recently shared or other things that have popped up, you are welcome to send those in that same feed as well. I do feel like I've seen a few generally about kind of parent views of IROR, FERPA, etc. Do y'all want to take a stab at that
Yeah,
topic?
I'll jump right in. I was actually trying to answer the FERPA question. The student needs to ask their advisor directly about the FERPA form. There is not a university-wide FERPA that allows the parent to then talk to anybody at the institution. So every college, sometimes even every department can have their own FERPA form. They're all similar, but it releases to a specific person. I have to get a FERPA form to write a letter of recommendation for a student. So I can say that this student has a 4.0 GPA, they have to fill out a FERPA form. It is taken very seriously at the institution that we do not talk about a student with anybody but the student unless that FERPA is on file. And that FERPA only lives for a semester or an academic year. So filling it out this first year doesn't mean that you can then call as a senior. Filling it out with the financial aid office doesn't apply to their major. And talking to a faculty member isn't the same as talking to an advisor. So I'll be honest, it is difficult, and I don't think it's intentionally difficult to make it harder for you, but it truly is because the student needs to be advocating for themselves. You can absolutely encourage your student to ask the questions. I don't mind when students even later will loop me into an email with their parent on the email. That makes it a little bit easier. I would rather talk to a parent with a student present than talking to a parent on their own. Sometimes I need the student to say what they said to me without me saying it, right? And then from the iRoar standpoint, no, there is not a login for parents. This is a student-facing portal. This is something that they are going to do. I'm seeing a little bit about classes. I'll jump in there and registration being difficult. Registration is hard in general. I mean, even for a senior that has all of the ability to get into their classes, scheduling your days of the week and getting it where you want it and the way it goes is difficult. Again, I think the more that they practice with it before we get there, they will be fine. Right now, if they are looking at iRoar and building a plan ahead, we're still really early. They're definitely going to see that every single class at Clemson is full. That is because that's intentional. We release seats for every orientation registration session every time we do it. And so we have calculated, Clemson's been here a long time. I've been doing this for 20 years. We know how to do this. So we release the seats we know we need for those sessions every time. Again, they might not get their dream class at 10 a.m. and might have to opt to take something else at 8 a.m. But again, we're going to get them into useful classes. Sometimes, I mean, especially just depending on the student, what credit they're bringing in and their schedule, I might tell them, hey, if that's your dream class, we're going to take that another semester. We're going to give them options. Kayla and I never are going to advise with just 4 classes. Take these 4, that's all you're going to take in the fall. We're always going to have options and backups to get them ready because there always are options and backups, right? So just maybe not falling too in love with that plan ahead they built that had them just going Tuesday, Thursday. let's see. Um, Sending AP scores from College Board. They may not be showing up in Degree Works quite yet. There is a little bit of a lag on there. So they have to go into the registrar's office. They have to get manually written to the record. I mean, a lot of things these days are very technology driven and the technology does it, but there's still a lot of things we do that are very human driven. So some of these things that have to happen still require a person to write it. And then, of course, if they are still in the class or taking exams, those new scores won't be out until July. But don't worry too much about it. Check in with their advisor, as they meet. They should be filling out that form that lets us know what they're anticipating. And we're going to talk to them about any of that. And if they show up to that advising appointment and we don't talk about something, they need to raise that flag. Hey, I'm looking for this math class. I don't see this math class on there. What's going on with that one? And we'll investigate. Sometimes they think it's coming from the high school transcript and we got to get a transcript from the dual enrollment. That happens a lot.
Casey, some people were asking if you could show the Ready, Set, Roar dates again and the course registration weeks again.
Absolutely. Let's go back to our calendar here. So, fear that I'm getting away from it. This would be the course registration weeks plus those few days in August that Jess talked about. I saw a question that asked if this was separate from academic advising. A reminder that yes, it is. This would be what happens after you've had that meeting with your advisor. Those are the registration dates, and then here are the Ready, Set, Roar session dates. Remember that your student can see all of that information in their admissions portal, and that those are college-based. So when they log into that portal, they're only going to see those Ready, Set, Roar sessions that are tied to their academic college. So something to keep in mind when scheduling, but just a reminder that when they log in, they will not have the option to select from all of these, but rather one of the two assigned to their college. And then I think we shared our schedule at a glance. Yes, in the chat. If you all want to look at that orientation link and scroll down, there's also some timing there. Saw a question about timing of Ready, Set, Roar, like of the day one session. I think Matthew covered this at some point, but we end around 8:30 on day one this year. So Matthew mentioned the guest social. Would just reiterate, highly recommend coming and spending time there. It's the only time that I spend time in that part of the stadium. And so certainly a good cap to what will be a fun but long and informative day for you all. Let's see what else we've got in here.
I'm seeing a little bit about math placement tests. So I'm going to jump in there. I answered one, but I see a couple of others. So the math placement test is required for entry into a lot of classes: chemistry, math, physics, some computer classes, some engineering classes. There's probably even a few others I'm not thinking of. So truly what I would recommend is go ahead and look at the math placement website, read through the things. Getting a start on it early is important. Students get up to 3 attempts to take the test. And so after each attempt, it gives them some modules to remind them of the things that they know about math. But I always tell students, don't study for it. We don't want to place you in a math that's above your level. So don't study too hard for it and don't cram too hard in between sessions. It's totally fine if you don't place into the math that you are expected to go into. We're going to put you into things that help build that skill. And again, I don't know that I've said this, but the first semester of college, especially Clemson, is very difficult. And it's not just about the courses. It's about navigating this entire experience, being on their own, figuring out how to do their laundry. Everything is overwhelming and new. And so it's truly fine if that first semester of classes is maybe a little bit lighter than what they wanted to do and don't go as aggressive. I would rather a student come out of that fall semester with a 4.0 after going really light than going a little bit too hard and having to make up GPA at the end to keep their scholarships or whatever was going on. So talk about that with the advisor, but I would recommend starting that math placement test early so that they have plenty of times for attempts. We definitely want that last attempt to be at least a week out from their registration so that we've got that score in. Otherwise, we may have to kind of put something in as a placeholder while they go and take it again, and then we're fixing their schedule again later. And I'm going to say that about registration too. Registration is our attempt at getting their schedule right. It may not be right. They may go in and change it later. This is the attempt that they're going to have, though, with all of the support helping them. Kayla and I are going to be in chat rooms, helping to make seats, helping to make things happen. Everything is there for them. We're talking to them about how to do co-requisites. We're talking to them about classes that have to go in together, classes and labs. And so we're really there to walk them through it. When they go to do that later, and again, in all future advising and registration, they're always going to be doing that on their own. So this is the time to really be ready and have it all set so we can get the best schedule possible. But again, we may still be planning to come back later and get something else later, especially if they're late getting on because of the VPN. They may lose out on getting some seats. And then I'm going to tell them, hey, you can always watch for that seat later. It's going to come available, right?
As far as the modern language requirement, that does depend on your major, but your student's advisor will let you know that. It's also in the virtual orientation module. So if a modern language is required, that definitely is stated in those modules. Same thing with the math placement test. That's also in the modules. So students are aware about whether they need to take it or not. Kind of like what Katie said, if it won't hurt to take it, especially if they don't have an SAT or an ACT score. I know a lot of students apply test optional. So that just might make things easier in the end, even if they don't take a math their first semester. It's good to have something on file, whether it's the CMPT score, SAT, or ACT score.
I see a lot of questions about the laptops. I'm going to say that none of us are the experts here about the laptops. Go on CCIT's website. If you're not finding what you need, call the store, talk with them. I really don't know about the stock of laptops. That's where I'm not an expert on that.
I am unfortunately also not an expert there, so would
Yeah.
echo his advice. And that, as I'm sure you all have seen, that tends to be very major and department specific. So really would just depend on what's being asked of your student. I will offer, and I sent this in the Q&A earlier, if you are able to come to campus for your Ready, Set, Roar session, that afternoon portion of day one lands you in the Hendrick Student Center for quite some time, which is where you would have the ability to go and check out laptop options, as well as some of the campus resources that you are asking about. So know that if that is in your schedule, that you will have a chance to ask those questions there too.
And I know some people also ask about AP scores like being sent directly. It's not an automatic process. Those have to be put in the system. So if you want to just double check, you can always reach out to admissions. Make sure that your student has their CUID. I would just ask them if they received them. That does not mean they're necessarily been put in the system, but as long as it's been received, they will eventually get put in the system.
Seeing a question about the virtual orientation. So you as a guest would make your own account for that. So you don't need to click on the student version of virtual orientation. Your access to that actually is not at all connected to their credentials to get into that platform. So you would use that same link to go to that same page that I can click back here in a minute, but you would just then create your own login information. As Matthew shared, there is some content there that is specifically catered to you all as parents and families, and then some content that is not there that students do need to see on their end. And so definitely want to make sure that you are accessing that separately. A question about summer start for parents. If I'm understanding this one correctly, Yes, so you would attend the Summer Start Ready Set Roar session, the same one that your student attends. This year we have two one-day sessions for Summer Start students that are split based on academic college. That exact breakdown I am not confident in, but whichever one your student sees in their portal is the one that you would also attend as their guest.
And for Ready, Set, Roar, everyone needs to register for them, whether they are in May, June, or July.
Yes, very important. Okay, we're making progress here. Let me do one more scroll.
There's a question about move-in, Casey. I don't know move-in dates.
I really want to say the 13th to the 15th, but let me, Riley and Carol, if y'all don't mind grabbing those and sending those in the chat. It is worth noting, I know you all are probably hearing about so many portals and apps and tools and things that will be helpful for both your student and for you. There is a separate portal from any portal that I've mentioned this evening that is connected to housing. So the housing portal is also something that is very important. And so if you are looking for housing related information on the admissions portal and not seeing it, that's because that is on the housing portal. And those did go out, I believe, in the last couple of weeks. So again, encourage your student to make sure that they have thoroughly combed through that inbox. But the housing portal is where I would start for any move-in information. A plug, which I'll get to in just a moment, is that on May 27th, we have our Calling Clemson Home webinar, and 80% of that is about all things housing, including move-in. So would definitely invite you to join us back for that. There is a way to come and visit campus outside of Ready Set Roar. So, the office that Matthew is a part of, Events, Visits, and Orientation, as he shared, also hosts our campus visits and tours. Best way to look at availability for something like that would be to go directly to their website, which we can also share and see what availability they have for campus visits. That does change a little bit in the summer, but there is a self-guided tour option as well that begins at the same place, includes a map, and is another great way to see campus if you're not able to be here during the Ready Set Roar dates. Just a reminder, your student is who would register for Ready Set Roar. So this admissions portal that we've talked about where they can see what Ready Set Roar sessions are available to them, what's on their checklist, any next steps. That is all completely driven by the student and requires their Clemson information to view. So as they go in and view what's available to them, they would register for that session, and then they would also add you as a guest.
I'm adding the link into lots of questions still about math placement test. Go check out that website. If you look at the View Interpret Score tab, it goes through every class and what the scores are that are required for entry into every class. This may be helpful, but if you haven't looked at DegreeWorks, this is going to look like a foreign language to you. If the student watches their academic modules, all of these things do make sense as they move through them. So you might not have heard these things because your students heard them. So go and ask your student if they're not sitting next to you, if they know what that is and do they need to take it. They probably do know. If they don't, they may not have paid attention in their modules. We definitely see students that skip through those videos. That we don't make those just to torture them, I promise. This was a great session today. Thanks, Casey.
Yes, of course. I'm gonna move us along to our final reminders here. Let me get back to our last couple slides. Again, I know there may be a couple there that we didn't get to. My staff and I will field those in the next couple of days and make sure that you all have what you need. But do want to just reiterate that this is being recorded, and we will include that as well as this, what we've put in the chat, the way that we've answered questions, any of those links and information that would be helpful. In a couple places, we will, in a couple days, publish on the Clemson Family Programs YouTube page, and then we will send out through the portal that you see here on the screen. You all have been put into a 2026 Parent Family Orientation community. So everything that relates to you as a new family member, we are sending there. You likely heard about this webinar through the portal, and so you should already have a fully set up account and profile, but would just remind you that that is where we will send this recording. I mentioned the next webinar, so calling Clemson home, all things housing, dining, parking, and transportation, some of those next questions that are likely emerging in your brain if they've not yet. And so join us for that one. We've got, I believe, 10 sessions this summer, and so we will share again that full schedule here in the chat. You can always go to our website and register for those to get some more questions answered and some more insight as we get closer and closer to your students' transition. So thank you all again for joining. Thank you so much to our panelists, and we will see you at the next session. Go Tigers!